gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Welcome, everybody. We are here. Spinner Rack is back in effect. Here I'm with my boy Petey, my boy Cal, and we're going to be talking about that new show, Star Trek Discover. Is it worth watching? Hell, is it worth paying for? Discover, is it worth it? You know, all I can say
is a credit card.
I'm a huge Star Trek fan, but for the last couple of years, I've been disappointed. You know, will this be the show that brings us back? I'm going to start with my man, Cal.
Okay. No, this will not be the show that brings us back, unfortunately. Look, the characters aren't compelling. Storytelling is uneven. We got about, and here's the bigger problem I have with it. This is not a regular show. You have to go to CBS Access in order to keep following. So I'm not sure what was the idea they had behind this. I had difficulty catching this show because I couldn't catch it the first night, and I had to track it down. With the aid of some superpowers, was able to bring the whole thing out. But so far, hey, I can't say this is a win column for Star Trek.
Or for CBS Access.
Either.
Well, it says it's doing okay that way, but on CBS Access, and it was on regular, Sunday night?
After 60 Minutes.
After 60 Minutes, yeah, there was a big push after that. So we got a couple things in line. So as far as the first episode, and whether, the way the subscription services go, what's going to happen later, we'll find out. But for me, it was getting back to the classic sort of Star Trek stuff, sort of having not necessarily a Captain Kirk, but getting to the banter between the two, the number one and the other, but having really, like harsh differences, like one being like, I'm not even want to get involved in anything, and she's like, we gotta go, and having mutiny go on the episode. So this is what we've been sort of asking for. The Next Generation gave us something a little different because it had the Klingons on the ship. What a lot of fans wanted was that final huge battle between the Klingons and the Federation, and this is given. Who knows if it's going to stay this way or they're going to work their things out, but we're getting what everyone said they wanted. Everyone was like, we know how Captain Kirk dies. He has all the Federation against all the Klingons. So we're getting that sort of thing. So I want to see how it plays out. So
let's get a little background here. So in this story basically follows, and it's going to shock some of you, it follows Spock's sister or adopted sister. Sarek is basically her mentor. She's a human who was adopted by
Sarek. He's her adopted father.
Right, so he's adopted father. So this is something that we never saw in canon. Understand? Never. Didn't even hear a whisper. When they talked about Stark having a brother, what movie was that? One of the movies, people freaked out. And here they're bringing the sister.
The Final Frontier?
Was it The Final Frontier?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I have problems with the whole continuity. I mean, that's my thing. And so ever since J.J. Abrams came along, it's been buck wild crazy. That's it. The story basically starts where the humans, the Federation basically meets the Klingons in space. And the Klingons are basically trying to start off a whole new war to bring all the clans of Klingon together and stuff like that. Problem number one. What the hell are the Klingons looking like? Oily, weird-looking creatures. You know what I'm trying to say? It looked nothing like the 1960s Klingon, nothing like the 1980s.
According to DS9, they mutate over the space of certain years, and there was some virus that was released, and that happened. So
but then what happened? Now we go back and we change them totally. This is the problem I'm trying to say. Do they not see that there has to be some basic resemblance to what is happening in the original Star Trek universe?
Where is this in continuity?
This is supposed to be right before
the movie, motion picture.
No, is this movie continuity or is this classic series continuity?
They said this is the regular continuity now. This is no longer that J.J. Abrams continuity. This is back to the original universe basically. So you have Sarek. Then this happens, I think, basically just before what do you call those guys? Just before the not Voyager, the main ship, but Picard and them, just before them, I believe.
Okay, yeah, the next generation.
Before along that time continuity.
Okay.
You know, so I'm like, come on, guys. I mean, it takes away from the whole thing when you have. I know you want to make the Klingons look different, but if you're going to end up having in one of your series a Klingon having a relationship with a human, what the hell? What the gooey goo goo? You know what I'm trying to say? Who would go with this dude? That's number one. Number two, it seems to just break all the rules that they set up with Klingon culture. You know what I'm trying to say? The albino Klingon, the different. What? I don't get it. You know.
I get it. It's called leftist agenda sneaking into our entertainment.
God.
All right. So, other issues. So going on.
Did you enjoy the show or not?
Yes, that would
what
If
hurt.
it's not
say.
called Star Trek, I loved it.
Huh? If it
yes.
was not called Star Trek. it
So,
would be-
So I'm vested. The
so
problem.
this is called this is called Space Goonie Goo Goo. You
First,
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
Google, I would be like,
So
"Yeah,
you-
well, it's a whole new show. Wow, it's interesting. I love this." Look, the
so you like
technology
it
look
in
great.
Orville? Would you rather it be Orville?
No, I can't watch the Orville. It's too damn silly. I watched the Orville and
The
it's like,
less said about Orville.
I just want to go like this to Orville, bow, bow. But you know, I get what the Orville's trying to do. They're trying to be, you know, they want it's a comedy. They want to make fun of the Star Trek genre, and I get that. But this show actually, I like the main character. She was pretty good. I like the captain. She was very good. I like the bridge crew. Worked out. I thought some of the tensions were a little bit like when the main character, what's her name again? When she
To say number one.
number one basically
Or the
just
name of the actress,
she took
Sonequa
control of
Martin
the
Green.
whole ship, you know, tried to take control. But I like the fact that the bridge fought back, that they were like, hey, this doesn't seem right. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
I like the new creatures that they've introduced. You know, I like all those aspects of it. But the story seems to be good. The people, the actors they put to me are class A actors. They're very good actors, and I was really believed in the first part and the second part of what's happening. I like the fact the Federation came in. I love the ships and stuff like that, and I also like the tension with the Klingons. It's just that I just don't like the fact that people like us, yeah, we're a little older. We have vested. We've bought, not me, but some people bought the
He's a little older.
encyclopedias and gone
I
to
mean,
the,
like pure. You're a purist.
He's a little.
no, I'm not
You're
a
Star
so
Trek purist.
I'm not
It's
a
okay
purist,
to say that.
But I'm trying to
It's
say
all right.
that
It's not a
people have bought
it's
into like
not
the
an
whole-
insult.
They've sold these encyclopedias and books, and this is how they're supposed to be.
Well,
and
you don't have to go-
And you change the doggone
Wait
thing
a
on them. No.
Okay.
And that's a classic Kirk.
Well,
No, that's the
It's not the
movie.
nerd stuff.
Calm.
It's not the nerd stuff. That won't get across to anyone, because then you're just a nerd living in a box with no light. But the whole idea, what I think you're trying to say is that it's about consistency.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make these changes, they should be with the relative amount of consistency, so I don't have to start scratching my head as to what's going on now.
And respect for the story and the characters. You know, I mean, like I said, I think they did a good job of doing the story. There's some little spots here and there I have problems. There's some problems with the whole Spock's sister and stuff, but those are not major things. But come on, man, just to show a little bit of respect.
Well-
This is the same thing we have with comic books. On a consistency where they have great stories, great characters, secondary characters that you can always use, and they don't, and they just want to just blow up the world and redo it however they want. Now,
Well, it's easier for the. I mean, I don't know if I spoke with this. I don't know. It wasn't. I don't think I spoke about this with Petey, but I was talking to someone else on this, and it's look, for a writer, it's easier if you can just come there and from the ground up, you can do whatever the hell you want, as opposed to they drop this 500-page Bible in front of you and say, okay, here's the continuity for Star Trek. Try to adhere to this as much as you can. Which one would you choose? Of course, you would want to do your own thing, and you'd have a chance to make. And everybody wants to make their own mark, even though it's not their stuff. Like, hey, look at the sandcastles I'm going to build, even though somebody's going to come and break them down. So that's part of it too.
no, but
Well, I would just add that if you look at, you ever seen the Star Trek animated series?
From the 70s?
Right after, and they had most of the actors in there, except for was it Walter Kinoan? Besides him, but it's like that's adding a ton of like the scene that's in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie where Spock is being pushed around saying half breed. That's in the cartoon. I watched it like recently, and I was like, that's a whole thing of more continuity. I was like saying, man, I need to watch this series. I've only seen a couple of them, and it seemed too serious of a cartoon. I was like, it looks like Star Trek, but it's so serious. But there's a lot of continuity in that
Yes.
that's different from what we know. But it'd be interesting to see. So I'm giving them a little bit of leeway. I understand what you're feeling and seeing new and the albino Klingon and that adding that stuff. But it did get to what he liked, which was Balance of Terror, which is like a submarine sort of Star Trek episode in the original series,
Fantastic episode.
where they're like they don't know what's on the other side. It's two different worlds, but it's like two submarines stuck in the sea, and a war happens, and that's one of Harv Bennett's. Like obviously, it took place. I mean, he used some of it for Wrath of Khan. Some of that's in there, so it's like that's what I like seeing in there. So I'm giving them a little leeway. I don't just like them continually introduce too much stuff, but I'm just giving them just a tiny bit.
The cartoon, that was more developmental continuity. They were adding more to it, as opposed to, you know what, everything that forget everything that you saw. We're just going to keep this. We're going to keep phasers. We're going to keep spaceships, and we're going to keep Vulcans, and everything else. Hey, we're just going to go along for a ride. I don't know. I just felt there's something missing from it. To be honest, I felt there's something missing from Star Trek. Absent the original crew, for me, there's always been a little bit something missing. I didn't get that with the exception.
That's a purist.
With the exception of J.J. Abrams' first film, I felt there was just something missing. I didn't really get into The Next Generation because Picard for me was very cerebral, and I liked Kirk. Kirk was hands-on. He was red-blooded. I liked that, but that didn't make Next Generation. That didn't make Next Generation poor.
But that's why they had Riker.
Riker is not
somewhat like the Kirk.
No, you had three characters on the show that pretty much, if you put them together, that would have been Kirk. But then you come over we get over the Deep Space Nine. I thoroughly enjoyed Deep Space Nine, but Deep Space Nine for me was not Star Trek.
I agree with you. But
Deep Space Nine was its own thing, and I thought they did a very good job with it. I enjoyed Voyager because I thought Captain Janeway was out of her mind half the time. But that was her character. That was look, she wasn't Kirk. She was Janeway. And where Kirk would come over here and go from the gut, Janeway also went from the gut. So if they had some sort of similarities there. But again, that was this particular cast of characters, and they really made it work. Now when they come back with a lot of this stuff, it's like, okay, it's not the original cast. We want to do something else. There's been something missing. I felt there's been something was missing on Enterprise, and that's one of the reasons why it was short-lived. I go to this show right now, and I'm like, there's just something. There's this synergy that's supposed to happen when these guys get together, and I'm not seeing it, and I'm not feeling it. The cast that they have for the Star Trek films has that synergy. Okay, these are good guys. They work very well together, and yet somehow it's like they're not giving them the catalyst to really jump off. They did that in that first film, and then with the second and with the third, it became less and less. Part of the reason was because they broke up that dynamic of Kirk. They took up the Kirk, Bones, and
McCoy?
Spock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Bones, McCoy.
Yeah.
And then they put Uhura into the mix, and it was like, well, no, that's not the dynamic. If you want to add her to the dynamic, that's fine. But you take Bones out, then he becomes this side player that you don't really need anymore. Because the only time you're going to really need him is when somebody's in trouble or their life is jeopardized. They brought it back in the third. But still, it wasn't quite enough. So I'm looking at the series and I'm like, okay, it has to be one of two things. It's either you are gonna have this, because that's what Star Trek is for me at the end of the day. It's this synergy of these characters, where they're greater than the sum of their parts. One guy can only have one or two lines, but it's still something that's very integral and necessary to make this stuff happen.
But you're basically limited to just three guys, and I think that you've seen in the whole universe of Star Trek, there are different views. Like you said, Voyager, you have Janeway and Chakotay. You have DS9 with...
Chakotay.
Chakotay.
Don't do that.
And, not manly.
And he was a sellout. Chakotay was a sellout.
That's right. The only saving grace he had was 7 of 9. They had to give him
I
that.
don't even understand how that relationship works.
I stopped
that didn't
watching
work
that
for
show,
me at
so
all.
I had some issues with that.
It's not about green eyes. It's about what made this series work for its inception and what kept it running. It was the synergy between the stories weren't always that great, to be quite honest. It was the synergy between those characters, how they played off.
Chakotay and Janeway.
I'm still from the original Star Trek series.
But let's move off from the original, because the reality...
Even if you go to DS9, they still had this great synergy. DS9, for me, I found to be very slow. Then you threw Worf in there, and they're off to the races. Okay.
Well, they upped the also writing. It's sort of, instead of being, what's the Straczynski show that was sort of like
Babylon 5.
Babylon
Which
5.
is a
So
good
it had that sort of feel. But then when they started saying, "Hey, we're going to go out. We're going to have this big battle, this war, this whole thing happened."
Straczynski had that whole war and
Star
battle
Trek
too.
is a level of Star Trek is a level of philosophy. It's a level of intellectualism, but it's also action.
And no,
okay,
but
there's
also
also drama.
discovery and science. I mean, that's one thing.
It's all of that, but each of those
out there and
and each of those
discovering.
characters are part of it. Okay, you get them together, they merge together, you get a really dynamite show. You take away one aspect of that, and it can work or it can fall flat. And so for me, there's something missing right now. It's not that, oh, I need to see a Kirk-like character. I need to see characters that bring that synergy. Okay, that bring that synergy to the table, and that I haven't seen so far.
Well, I mean, it's a new show, and we all have to agree. You got to give them a little time to get that thing.
Plenty of time. They're on CBS Access. They're gonna have
But
all
the
the time.
question is
so
whether
they
or
get rid
not-
of CBS Access.
Would you right now pay for CBS Access?
No.
PD,
Depending on the money, yes, to see it.
Monday or Monday?
Depending on the money that I have, yes, not Monday. But I was also, I mean, it's interesting. I was reading I Am Spock by Leonard Nimoy,
Yeah.
and he talks about the actors in the original series being engaged from like Uhura, where you see her and she's in the Battle of Terror, where they say she goes from communications, like take over the helm, and then Sulu just does a look over to Uhura, not saying anything, and it builds connection without them having any
To
sort
say
of
anything,
conversation.
yeah.
And then when you see it later, when he gets, Sulu gets drugged and he immediately grabs Uhura, you're thinking there's continuity when there's just like day players. They're like, oh, I'm going to Star Trek today. Oh, great. I'm going to sit here and think, all right, we're going to give you something. All right, Uhura, we're going to wipe your mind completely in this episode. And they did. They wiped her mind and then they re-educated her the same episode, and she's back on the bridge. And it's like, wow, Uhura's smarter than, like, if they wiped my mind, I'd be still back in the corner somewhere. They wiped, like, so that sort of writing and storytelling and building with people that you didn't even know were going to be there that much. They just were available, and that's what you also have to, what you're talking about with the chemistry, have people that are engaged even though they're not doing anything. That moment where you give a piece that the director can say, oh yeah, I can use that in the show, and then they're like, let's bring them back. Let's bring them back, and then next thing you know, you have, what was it? You have 7 people besides, the nurse and who was it?
Scotty?
What's the nurse who?
Chekhov?
No, not. I mean, like.
Oh, you mean Yeoman? The Yeoman?
Yeah.
Yeoman.
Who was it Majel? It was Gene Roddenberry's wife.
Right.
Right.
So it's like you have her, you have these people that just were not there for that long, but you have this chemistry in the acting where you're looking at it, it's like, oh, what's the name is hamming it up, Shatner's hamming it up, but they built a chemistry that was so strong that they've been trying to get
I
that.
get it.
So yeah.
And Shatner made the show because they had that original pilot and didn't go
Pike.
anywhere. And then they tapped Shatner. And after they tapped Shatner, that's where they pretty much got the green light. And it was Shatner. It was Shatner's show. As much as people, may want to. I mean, we've read all the stories about it. These two guys don't get along. But without Shatner, they wouldn't have got the green light and gone as far as they did. For all the hamming up that he did,
Well,
and people.
Well,
people
he didn't-
they work together, and that's what you got to say. And like you were saying before, it didn't work well with the actor who played Pike, but it did work well with.
Well,
with
Roddenberry wanted that cerebral show. You could see he got it when he did Next Generation.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted. He went back to number 1, all the stuff that that he wasn't able to do in the first series. But when you look at it, the battles that they had as actors of, Shatner taking lines from Nimoy and then Nimoy coming in and saying, am I here just to agree with him? And then they say, all right, let's, people like him, let's make them brothers on the show. And that, that made chemistry where they're playing, like I think they say Shatner was doing a ton of jokes to, playing practical jokes on Nimoy, where he'd take his bike and he put it up in the rafters and stuff like that. And then, you could see after the show was over, they were still friends. So they're still, even though they're competitors, obviously, but they were definitely friends. And that's what you have to look for, is getting two people. You got, Richie Cunningham and the Fonz.
Yeah.
And you got to keep them both satisfied. You got to find a way to do it, even though you're trying to find, oh, if he doesn't want to do that, take the ears away. You're taking it. But I mean, it's obviously we're fans, so bringing up a lot of different information for us.
It's not a new show. It's Star Trek. And as much as everybody wants to say, hey, a lot of times they're asking us, hey, forget about this and go for... It's Star Trek. You can't forget about everything else because then you don't have Star Trek. The same way I've given even when it was the same players. If it's a new film, it's a new outing. It doesn't mean simply because you have the same players, I'm going to like this film. Didn't like The Final Frontier. I was like, hey, I don't know what the heck is going on, what was going on right over here. But then you come back, you have your 6th film, The Undiscovered Country, and say, yeah, this is a solid film. Maybe, this is great. Really good
Yes, it
entry.
was. Don't listen to him.
Wrath of Khan. That's the
Khan
best.
No, the Wrath of Khan is like the gold standard for all of them because it was that good. But
Undiscovered Country.
but that doesn't mean that you didn't have other films that weren't good. Undiscovered Country was great. The theme that ran throughout that was so palpable, and all the motifs that went along with it, very, very good. Good choice of acting. Good choice of acting, and it was their that was their swan song, and it was a good one for them to go out on. Then you come to a show like Enterprise, which I thought had its moments here and there, but the same thing Petey talked about with people being engaged, because they had who was the helmsman? Like Geordi? No, it wasn't Geordi. I can't remember the name of the helmsman. But this guy would sit there, and there was almost like nothing for him to do. And then every once in a while, he would tell them, hey, get us out of here. And they would cut to him, and he would like have this, concerned look on his face. And it was like, it doesn't look like he's doing anything.
Right.
Whereas he just noted with Sulu, you don't need the interaction between you and the machine. You need the interaction between you and another individual.
Yeah.
Okay? Have somebody come over and say, hey, okay, I need to do this. I need you to watch the helm for a second. And then have them struggling with the helm. Then have them come back and say, wow, I didn't realize it's that difficult, but you make it look that easy. Along those particular lines. They just didn't have that.
But I see what you're saying. But with Enterprise, I thought the crew was good. I did like the captain. I did like his second kid. I liked
It's
his-
nothing
wrong.
But-
It's nothing wrong with the
but-
players,
hold
but
on,
they didn't
Right,
get them in. They didn't get that synergy.
I kind of felt the opposite. The problem, though, I felt was that they kept on. They knew what people wanted to see. They wanted to see the Borg. They wanted to see the Klingon. And this wasn't supposed to show up for a very long time. And yet, this is what I'm talking about, where the continuity, they don't respect it. They don't respect the audience and say, well, you're not going to get the Klingons, or you won't get the Borg in this particular format, or the Romulans, or whatever. And they did it. You know what I'm trying to say? Or the Romulans, yes. But that's my problem.
So you're just
those
saying
guys-
they blew everything. You're saying the
Yeah.
Enterprise didn't work. I'm
No,
sorry to
I'm
say.
saying it worked. I like the characters. I really like the characters.
So
I
how do
was
you,
invested with
but
the
how do you
characters,
square
but-
that with Green Eyes then? Because if this is Start and they haven't met these guys yet, they haven't met them yet.
Yeah.
We can't see them.
And
But that's what I'm trying
And
to
they
say.
introduced some pretty good. I thought they introduced good new villains. In the last season when
Enterprise, yeah.
they had that terrorist attack and they were going over there to try to prevent the Earth from being blown up. They had that whole what is it? It was like a big stream of heat vision and it like severed South America or something of that
wow.
nature. That was a big deal. It wasn't anything we even heard. It's not even anything we hear about in any of the other Star Trek things like Earth survived this incredibly big terrorist attack. So I thought they had some stuff that was compelling, but it's not an easy lift. You've got to have good players. You've got to have good story. If you want to have great Star Trek, that's what you have. And to be quite honest, Star Trek has been great for the most part. It has. It's not Star Wars. Okay, it's
not
Star Trek.
Wars, but I'm saying, yeah, I see what you're saying, but the problem is that, all right, when they felt, the ratings are dropping, the shows it isn't doing that well, throw in the board. Throw in the
Well,
Klingons.
it was in the Borg in the first season, though. When didn't they add the Borg in the first season of Enterprise?
Yeah, and then you have to explain
Then
how.
there's the
So,
Borg,
I mean, they had them in the back pocket. They're like,
Right.
oh yeah, we got an episode. Oh no, put it first. Put the Borg
But-
first
but
now.
But what I'm trying to say is it's like if you're doing a story, and you have it's like you're doing the classic X-Men, right? Magneto's not in the first. All right, so let's leave the X-Men alone, all right? But I'm saying, you start with the original Fantastic Four. You don't show up with Galactus and Silver Surfer on the second episode because the ratings are down. It doesn't
right.
make sense.
You're right.
You have to build up to it. Probably you may deal with it. Probably the Herald comes in, that you deal with and don't realize that's part of Galactus's whole crew much later on. And it times in. But come on,
This is a big moment right here, Mario. You remembered something about the comic books. It's a big moment,
That's
everybody.
right. And Mario has not read a comic book since Little Dot.
That's how he don't even remember Little Dot anymore.
G.I. Joe and stuff like that.
Hey,
Real men.
Petey served that one up. That was too good to resist.
Right, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So
Yeah, you got
the Federation had enemies before they got to the Romulans and to the Borg. Why didn't we say like some character? What are the blue people? What are they called?
Oh, but what about the Andorians? The
Andorians.
people who
They're
made up the
like
whole.
them, right?
But they were on the show.
They were on the show, but I'm saying
The
right,
Andorians were on the
Lord.
show.
they were correct, but I'm saying no, they're right. They were on the show.
Oh, well.
And they fought them. But I'm just saying
They brought
They should have
everybody.
brought somebody else from the past to be the main character. But I just felt that they
You mean the main? They needed a stronger antagonist. Is what you
exactly.
want.
So they needed to get rid of the other problem they had with that show was they had the future battles where people come to time back and forth, up and back. They go up and down. The time that that just bugs you out. What the hell?
Well, I understand some of us don't have the intellect to follow along with those type of intricate stories, so I can
And I think
understand if that,
but that's not me. And that's not only me. It's millions of other people. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, this is a little too weird
Oh,
for me.
please! I had people. There were people on. There was like a good thread online with people saying, "Hey, what happened on This Is Us? You know, was he in the car? Or was he out of the car?" It's like, come on, you bunch of morons.
This Is Us. What's that?
Okay, it was a time. You know, look, that was a transition in the story.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
that hard to sort out.
Yeah. Well,
But
what are you
if
talking
you
about?
if
What
you indulge
episode was that?
stupidity, people will keep running with it because people will just want to talk about it.
What
I mean,
episode was This Is Us?
That's a show.
TV show. But that's, I mean, I've experienced that
Superhero
sort of.
show?
No, it's
No,
a regular show. But if you have in regular stories, sometimes they, like in Lost, they did a time jump to the future, and everyone was like, they'd done so many flashbacks. They're like, oh my God, this is a look into the future. This is right in there. Like, come on, guys, it's just a flash forward. Calm
Yeah,
down.
it was a quick scene. She said, he said, hey, she's like, 3 months from now, we won't even think about this. And then the next thing you know, you see her driving alone, you know, and it doesn't take that much. You see somebody else who looks different than they did 3 months ago, and you're like, okay, not a big deal. The same thing with the time shifts is that you have to pay attention. But I think we're getting away from the whole thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I feel something's missing. You guys are still on board.
We're still on board.
Nobody's
It's like
paying for
this.
CBS access.
It's like this. It's like this.
Well, so
Down, going up.
Jonathan Frakes. So to continue this, Jonathan Frakes is going to be directing several episodes. So that's pretty good. They are supposed to be bringing.
Is Rick Berman still involved? Because we
I
have to
don't
get
know,
rid of
man.
him.
Well, Brandon.
Jonathan Frakes is, I mean, look, if you told me Jonathan Frakes is bringing back gargoyles, I'd be like, oh, hell yeah. But, you know, I don't know about this.
He like gargoyles. Yes.
Do you remember that third Star Trek film, the Next Generation, where he had the joystick in the middle of the ship? Do you remember that one? That was a sad moment. So he might be an okay director, but at that point he said, nope.
Hey,
the
he
joystick.
is Star Trek royalty. Bite your freaking
Manual
tongue.
controls. That's what he said. Manual controls.
William Shatner is Star Trek royalty. William Shatner is the king and has yet to appear in any of the new films. So, hey, you know, royalty only gets you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we bared it all, and it seems we do like the show, but we don't want to pay for it. Put it on CBS.
I just need a little while. I'm working out some things, and I'll pay for it some point later.
That means-
Spin it right out.